Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the NSCAC Presents Behind the Bench. Today we have a very unique conversation with former national player and coach Colin Miller, Paull Dolan, former Canadian national team goalkeeper and goalkeeper coach, Nick Ledgerwood, former pro soccer player and former Canadian national team player, and Patrice Bernier, former Canadian national team player and former Montreal Impact and player and assistant coach. My name is Valerio Rocca, and I'm the vice president of the NSCAC. We're going to be discussing Canada's national men's teams during the 2003 and 2004 year. If anybody has any questions, please don't hesitate to use the chat box or the question and answer section in our chat. And good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the show. There's a lot of exciting times going on with the national team right now, but I think we'll save that discussion for later on in the chat. Let's start with Colin, former national coach. Colin, explain your time and your experience with the national team back then.
Yeah, thanks, Valerio. Thanks for having me on again. It was such a unique time, during the 10 games that I had in charge of the national team. I came to realize right away that I wasn't the guy that was going to be put in place as the permanent head coach. So there was a lot of times that I inherited a group of players that were in transition between coaches, and I guess my role overall, along with Paull Dolan, who was with me most of the time, if not all the time, was that we just tried to steady the ship and get things on a sort of even keel for whoever was going to take over. Valerio, that was probably job number one. And what I always wanted to do was try to make the guys comfortable, have them really enjoy their time coming back to the national team, because it was a period during all those years where there were players that were, for whatever reason, opting to play for club rather than country. And it wasn't an easy time. Even in the Gold Cup in 2013, we had one or two players leaving the group because they were going back to Europe to try to get a contract and get their stability in their livelihood. So I couldn't see that being the case nowadays with so many players being involved with top clubs. So that's a real positive nowadays. But back in that particular era, there was the phrase of unattached FC tagged to a lot of the groups that were being assembled. And in some cases, I'm sure these guys will attest to it, that there were players that were coming into the camps that the only first team minutes that they'd had with first team players was with the national team, and that in itself is quite a statement. But as I said, thankfully things nowadays are in a different mindset, and John Herdman's done a wonderful job with his group. So, but I'll leave it for some of the other guys to chime in there. But that was my primary role. But I can certainly say, hand on heart, that it was one thing being a national team player, one thing being a national team captain, but to actually have the privilege of being the interim head coach of our country was a thrill that was second to none.
Anybody else like to add to what Colin had to say?
I'll go now, because I guess Colin had appointed me as the assistant coach for this trip, and it was the first time that I'd been involved at the staff level as a coaching level. And obviously my main priority was to work with the goalkeepers, having been a goalkeeper with the association for many years, and retired in '97. And through the Holger Osiek era, I hadn't really been involved in any way. And then when Colin took on the interim role in November of '03 is when I was able to join him and do the dual role of assisting him. And really, I was just, if Colin talks about, keeping the team within the guardrails and just keeping things ticking over until a new manager was appointed, then I was just trying to do the same thing in assisting him through that. but working in particular with the goalkeepers in my first go around with Lars Hirschfeld in particular, who's coming into his own as the primary keeper for the national team and would be for a number of years after that. It was something I was really excited about doing. We went to both the Czech Republic and Ireland on that first trip. So two really big, stiff challenges and intimidating places to play. And, you know, it was apparent right from the beginning that Colin had the guys going in the right direction. Tough results against good teams. But you could see that there was a sense of, okay, now we're starting to come back together again as a group, and there's a future here. Because he's right, there was an era, I think, after the Gold Cup in 2000, where that was a great high for the Canadian national team and the association. But after that, I think that there was a bit of a downtrend, and so the move was made, and Holger was moved out, and Colin came in, and I think that was the first step towards getting back to a proper national team, where Frank Yellick took over after Colin, I believe it was, and then you build it to where it is today.
Yeah, if I can add into that is, yeah, I have to give a lot of credit. Colin Miller will always have a place soft in my heart, because my first cap is given by Colin Miller. Yet before he gave me that cap, we were at the camp together, which was under the stewardship of Osik Olger. It was in Estonia, and this was the first time I was being called up to the group. At the time, Holger had made it clear that playing in USL or A-League back then wasn't sufficient, and so I was now in Norway and Europe, and a few weeks later I get a call up to go to the national team. And in Estonia, I trained, felt I did well, and it was a young new generation, if you could say, because Julian Guzman was there, Thibaut Hutchinson, Jimmy Brennan was doing well, Paull Dolan was still in Germany, so players were still young or coming not yet in their prime. And I felt I had done well at the camp, but I didn't play a minute. Me and Mark Rogers specifically, we were the only two players who had not participated into the game, and we didn't understand why. But anyway, Holger had given us, you know, pretty much saying, too bad, guys, but there's always a next camp. And the next camp came along, which was in November, and then Colin Miller was now an interim coach. And I remember the first conversation with him as we got the camp in Czech Republic was Prague. Wasn't easy, because I think Czech Republic at the time was top 3 in the world. Pavel Nedved a few months later was going to be given the Ballon d'Or. So, but I remember the first conversation was he had told me that at the last camp, he had felt that I had done well, and that I had deserved at least a few minutes under the national team coach at the time, and that he was going to give me that opportunity to shine or to showcase myself at this next level with that camp. And at that time, we still had Thomas Rosiński was joining back in. Paul Pescisolido was there, and like Paull Dolan said, Lars, I was playing with him in Norway, and he was starting to become like the number one star position player in terms of a goalkeeper. And yeah, we played Czech Republic. It was a tough result, but it was a great experience. But I remember those words, because when you go to the first camp, you don't play. You're like, do I have what it takes? Do I want to keep playing? Like, will I prioritize Canada, because I was in my first few months in Europe, in Norway, and you want to establish yourself. You want to have, like you said, Colin, your livelihood established, and then say, okay, now I can go represent my country. And while those words with Colin Miller was comforting and actually saying, okay, yeah, I do have the abilities. Now let me go prove it and show the confidence that the coach, Colin Miller, at the time gives it to me. And I remember I played the right midfield, right in front of Paull Dolan, and we had Pavel Nedved on that side, so it wasn't an easy task, but it went well. And I fell sick. I wasn't able to start the next game, but I still played against Ireland, and it was 2 tough games, but you felt that the young players at the time that were coming in, first caps or the first moments with the group, we felt, oh, okay, with Thomas Rosiński, Paul Pescisolido, guys who have been there before, but this new group could generate something. And I think Colin had had reestablished a confidence of being around each other, playing with the national team.
Thank you for watching this short preview video from the National Soccer Coaches Association of Canada. To see the full video, plus have access to hundreds of other coaching videos, blogs, webinars, and podcasts, plus free and discounted coach education courses and other soccer merchandise, plus to have exclusive access to register for all future NSCAC conventions, both live and online, click on the link below to become a member of the NSCAC today. Also, please remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, as your continued support allows us to continue to provide coach education and coach development resources to soccer coaches across Canada and worldwide. Thank you again for your continued support, and we look forward to seeing you at future NSCAC events.